7, verses 1 to 5, and verse 10.
Well, there's so many parts to Christmas, isn't there? It can be overwhelming with all the marketing and traditions, and it's incredibly hard to distinguish between what is God and what are the frills. You know, what is biblical and what is heresy? Where is Jesus after all? Should we just throw out most of the flair and simplify it? Or is there something we need to add in? What's at the root of Christmas? You know, sometimes I think it makes you shout like when Charlie Brown did, when he said, "Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?" So cue the spotlight, and everyone quiet down. Schroeder stopped playing piano, and everyone looked to Linus. During Advent, we'll be preaching exactly to this. What are the roots of Christmas? We won't answer every question during these few weeks, but we long to strip back the noise and turn our gaze to Jesus. To do that, we'll be going to the roots of the first Christmas, namely some Old Testament prophecies in Isaiah, and some have even coined it a very Isaiah Christmas. So today we'll begin by talking about Christmas has its roots in hope. So we do get busy decorating, especially this time of year, with usually the Christmas tree at the center, isn't it? It's the focal point in many rooms, even our stage or out in the foyer. And the great debate can begin over again. Is it a fake tree or a real tree? What's best in the end? So let's start a fight. No, let's just have a show of hands, just a show of hands. Who prefers a fake tree in their home? Okay, all right. And who prefers a real tree in their home? Whoa. Okay, this is the third time we've done this, and that's like even in this room. It was not even before. There's a lot of fake tree people in the other services, just so you know. Yeah. But don't worry, everyone, neither are commissioned by Jesus, so we're good. But many do debate the root of the Christmas tree. And you could do a quick Google search and find the pagan rituals from a long time ago. You could search up the Puritans who tried to squash all decorations, including the Christmas tree. But in the midst of that were the Germans, who brought the Christmas tree into the home in our current iteration for the first time. And one you may know, his name is Martin Luther, who brought it into his home and even put candles, burning fire, onto a cut Christmas tree. Great idea, right? But all to symbolize life and the light of Christ. Something green in your home in the coldest, darkest time of the year. It does something for us, doesn't it? Well, our real Christmas tree went up about 10 days before Christmas, not November 1st, like fake tree people can do. Yeah. Sometimes we would go to a tree farm. Sometimes we would cut it from our own property, because us New Brunswickers know how to do that. And then most times, though, it was from the convenience store down the road. And I loved going and getting the tree and getting it up and decorating it. And I still do. I pick it out, I bring it home, we cut off the bottom, right? You put it in, you fill it with water, and you decorate the tree. It's so green and lush and full of life, and the smell, right? It strikes a chord of life. Or that diffuser, if you have a fake tree, right? You gotta get those essential oil going or something, I don't know. But it's hope in the coldest, darkest time. But what are we doing after all with these trees? We're taking something dead, and we're making it really pretty, right? For real trees, we give it water, and when it stops drinking, you feed it a little sugar, right? It'll keep going for a while. But eventually, it's true. The needles will start falling off, and it has to go. We put trees in, and it gives us hope and a sense of life, at least for a time. But we know that's not hope, right? We like, in our culture, in our world, to dress up dead things to make them look pretty. Maybe to give us hope or to give us a sense of togetherness, I'm not sure. We do this with many things in our lives. But I think this is what hope is. Hope is believing in God who brings life to what is dead. Hope is believing in God who brings life to what is dead, not just dressing things up, but life. I think that is the root of Christmas. That is the root of Christmas. Listen to how our passage in Isaiah starts when it talks about this. It says, "Then a shoot will grow from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and strength, a spirit of the knowledge and of the fear of the Lord." Well, Isaiah was a great prophet, warning Israel and Judah of pending exile. They were being booted out of their country by God through an army of Assyrians. And later was another country called Babylon. Chapter 9 and 10 of Isaiah predicted that the Assyrian army would be God's hand of judgment on Israel for not listening to God as their king and in his rule and reign. Listen to chapter 9, 13 and 14 when it says, "The people did not turn to him who struck them. They did not seek the Lord of armies. So the Lord cut off Israel's head and tail, palm branch and reed in a single day." Israel will be chopped down, it said, which happened. And then Assyria, the ones doing the chopping, would be chopped down, and it happened, leaving a stump left of Israel. It's a fairly depressing way to start the Christmas season, isn't it? Yeah. But you can imagine it. Think about it for a minute. Imagine Canada being swept away by the great army of the South, maybe even, where everyone's relocated to different states throughout the United States, losing our jobs and ceding our land, and maybe those lucky few who get to stay back and farm the land and tend the mines. Right? This was Israel, a stump of its old self. So here comes the hope. This shoot will grow from the stump of Jesse. Well, Jesse was King David's father, the greatest king in all of Israel that ever lived, King David. So Isaiah here is pointing to the glory days of Israel and Israel's greatest king, the most faithful to God. And he says that lineage would produce a king who they later called a Messiah who would save Israel and restore her. Now, their hope, though, is like this stump. Pastor Rob showed this image at the beginning of our Rooted series in September. You might remember it. It's one of our great trees that line the drive as you come into the building. They're beautiful trees, aren't they? Well, this one got destroyed, right? But when you think it's over, notice what has popped out. A shoot, life. Life has come from the stump. This is what our passage is talking about. Isaiah prophesied hope that was to come and not just restore the glory days of Israel, but to bring something better, something unexpected. Life did return to Israel. But it took hundreds of years, and Israel did look like a stump for a long time, but it did shoot out. A shoot of life through a baby, a God-made man, Jesus. Jesus was the ancestor in the line of David. Did you know that? The one called the Christ, the Messiah, whom Israel was waiting and longing for, is Jesus. Because that's the reality of who Jesus is in the end and what he does. Life comes to dead things when Jesus is involved. Every single time. Every single time. And this can bring us great hope as we live our life here on this earth. Because when we look into our lives, what can we see? What do we see? We can often see dead things. We can see things that are maybe empty and hopeless in our lives. Maybe that's your experience. We may see nothing good inside of ourselves. Some have lived lives and life is not what you expected it to be. You had hopes and dreams and passions that were crushed. Now, don't get me wrong, some of you have had a great life. You've got everything you've wanted. The family, the wealth, whatever it is, but yet something inside of you, maybe today even, is empty and calling out. Christmas shines a bright darkness on us. It highlights that feeling of emptiness and hopelessness. And I think we need to be aware of this in the church, especially this time of year, where many of us can feel like a stump of ourselves. When it's the most joyous season of the year, we can feel the darkest. The axe dropped on us from the curses of life, sure. But I wonder today if you would come with me on a journey to Isaiah to look at God's work with Israel for hope, of a nation who was chopped down and yet was told to still have hope. And first, for us today, the good news is Jesus has already come for the first time. So we need to look to him, the giver of life. Some need to put lights on an evergreen tree this time of year to be reminded of the hope of the life we have in Christ. So light them up. Light them up. Because Jesus, he doesn't dress up dead things to make them look pretty, but he brings actual, real, beautiful, new life. And he brings it today. It's today. Now, some of you are still saying, I don't feel that sense of hope today. That's fair. So let's go back to Isaiah then and see what gets in the way of us seeing that hope. What gets in the way? Verses 2 through 5 of chapter 11 say, the Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and strength, a spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight will be in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, and he will not execute justice by what he hears with his ears. But he will judge the poor righteously and execute justice for the oppressed of the land. He will strike the lamb with a scepter from his mouth, and he will kill the wicked with a command from his lips. Righteousness will be a belt around his hips. Faithfulness will be a belt around his waist. For Israel, they depended on judgment from what they could see with their eyes and hear with their ear. And often that was twisted and unjust. Unjust judges and kings who ruled the land, so that the poor and the outcast, the very ones God said to take care of, were not treated well. Actually, horribly. Hope for these people was left for the justice that was to come through this king, this new one, this shoot. It for sure wasn't coming through their current kings. So it's these physical things that Israel was relying on, of seeing and hearing. I want you to listen to the alternative to Israel's attempt to live by the physical senses alone. Isaiah says that the branch, the shoot of the stump, who we know is Jesus, the saving one, will depend not on the physical senses, but by the Spirit. Did you hear it in the passage? By the Spirit, to give and to guide, and he lists out some qualities and traits. To give and guide wisdom and understanding, counsel and strength, knowledge and the fear of the Lord. These are the things, and by the Spirit, that Israel should have been living by in the first place. And now this one who would come, Jesus, would live by the Spirit. Of course he does. The question becomes for us, though, is what do we depend on? I think it's very similar. We depend on the physical as well. We often see to believe, don't we? Someone comes and tells you something or trying to convince you, and what do we say? We say, prove it. Where's the evidence? Show me. Then I'll believe. That's what we depend on. Right? It means we depend on courts and officials, companies and billionaires and tax refunds. And you could fill in the blank of any of the physical things we depend on today. We separate our spiritual life of Christ and the rest of our lives in this working world, don't we? We're taught this. We're taught to not include our spiritual in our culture, and not to look to Jesus, but eliminate him from our schools and our universities and our working life. Keep him out of it. That's what we're taught. So it's no wonder that we don't We don't know how to even lean in on the Spirit as a natural tendency. They're not separate. We need the Spirit. What are you depending on in our physical world to bring you hope today? Maybe this Christmas season. It is Christmas after all, and I think a pain of Christmas is how things, stuff, purchasing, hello Black Friday, is the root of hope for happiness for so many of us. When all things can do is temporary. They break, they erode, they're gone. And I think stuff and things really in the end perpetuate sadness in so many ways. There's a Business Insider article of a journalist who interviewed 21 self-made billionaires. Pretty fun interview. She found them happy overall, which I was shocked. Usually we say people with money are the least amount of happiness, right? No, it's not what she found, but why then? What's going on? Well, the richest self-made billionaires are happy, not because of money, but primarily because of relationship and enjoying the small things in life. I found that intriguing. I think a key here is they're talking about self-made billionaires as well, so there's a different character there. So listen to this. They say, what I found out in my research is the money itself doesn't change much about your ability to be happy. It just magnifies your personality. That was intriguing to me. Happy people become happier and unhappy people become miserable when they get wealthy. Intriguing, isn't it? In the end, I think we depend on the physical for hope of happiness and a good life, but it cannot do. It can't. It can't do. The root of hope in reality is the Spirit of God in Jesus. His Spirit leads us to all wisdom and direction and restoring in life. He makes all things right, namely the way it was created and intended to be. That's where hope lies. So where does this lead then? If we look to the Spirit of God in Jesus, where does the Spirit of God in Jesus lead to? What does it look like? I'll say this statement: hope in God's justice brings peace. Listen to the passage. It continues on. And for some of you, maybe the words are distracting. Try to picture it. It says this: the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf, the young lion, and the fattened calf will be together, and a child will lead them. The cow and the bear will graze, their young ones will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like cattle. An infant will play beside the cobra's pit, and a toddler will put his hand into a snake's den. They will not harm or destroy each other on my entire holy mountain, for the land will be as full of the knowledge of the Lord as the sea is filled with water. What do you hear in this passage? The predator and the prey live together in peace. No one's destroying the other. Like a child is playing around some snakes. Now, some of you are afraid of snakes, right? And they live. And we love this on social media. Maybe you've seen a picture of like a lion and a kitten kind of hanging out. Those are intriguing to me, and they're just adorable, first of all, as well. But there's a young lioness in 2001 and 2002. And this is her. Her name was Kamanyuk. And she took on herself to adopt antelope calves. Not to eat them, but as her children. Some days and some for months at a time. And she even reportedly let a calf go to feed from its mom and return. She would even protect these calves from other lions. Now, the studies show that the lioness lost her family, and that was probably trying to make her own. I don't know the science behind it all, but I think this is a glimpse of the kingdom of God and what his justice looks like. In Isaiah, this is what the justice of God is often referred to. Seeming enemies living together in peace. the one with power not lording it over the one without. It looks a little different than our justice, doesn't it? And what we have in our world. No, for God, justice is making things right the way he created it to be. Where all wrongdoing and evil are over. Because God's justice always brings peace. Always. And this is the hope of Israel. And this is also our hope today. It's the hope of Christmas. The first coming of Christ, and also now the second coming of Christ. They both bring hope. Christmas and the second coming bring hope. We know that this type of peace isn't fully here. This is an anomaly to see a lion with an antelope, where one day it becomes normal. This type of peace. That's why we need hope. It's not fully here yet. Christmas points then to not only the baby being born, but Jesus' promise to return to enact his justice once and for all. That's the lingering piece of this prophecy in Isaiah that is still yet to come. And there's other Isaiah prophecies and a bunch of Old Testament prophecies that are still yet unfulfilled, that point to this type of world that is one day coming. It is coming. You can imagine this world in your mind where all wars and strivings are over, where the poor don't have to be poor anymore, and the outcasts are not outcasts, and you yourself will not have a worry or care in the world. Can you imagine it? That's the hope we live in. That's what's coming. Hope in God's justice that brings peace, that type of hope, it changes then how we live today. It changes how we live today. I react differently because I hope in him. I don't need to bring revenge or my version of justice when someone is unjust to me. And nor do I need to be shamed and silenced when someone hurts me. No, but I live with great expectation of a king who is on the move and who cares for me. There was one Christmas, and probably many Christmases growing up, where my family didn't have much money. I was a kid and could hear my parents talk about bills and gifts with stress tones. Maybe you've experienced that. I believed in God, but did not yet know about this kind of justice that he could bring to people who are in need. We weren't sure where Christmas was coming from that year until one night. A knock on the door. People came in and flooded our kitchen, a table with groceries. And I remember how being emotional and witnessing this from a local church. God's justice was at work that night for these 4 kids who needed food. That has shaped my view of God and how I live with hope that one day that will happen for everyone at every moment. That there's no more need and no more lack, because that's the hope of Jesus, that he brings life where there seems like there should be no life and where it's hopeless. He brings hope. We hope in him today. Christmas has its roots in hope. So here's my encouragement for us here today. Infuse your life with the hope from God. This world will try to get you down, but infuse your life with the hope from God, not physical things, but in his spirit. Because he is a God who makes dead things alive and whose justice brings peace. Infuse your life with hope. Let me give you a couple of ways to do that here today. One is simply this: to study it, pray about it, and to ask God to show you glimpses of his hope. He'll do it. He'll pull back the curtain. His hope is all around us. He's on the move. Let's ask him. Let's study it. Let's seep in it and saturate ourselves in his hope. Here's a second thing. Be real and authentic with one another. Let me explain what I mean. The reality is things are hard here. I think we've established that here today. Things can feel dead here. So let's not dress up the dead things in our life to make them look pretty. Let's admit, is what I'm trying to say, when there's a stump in our life, when there's hard things. Let's admit, not to be depressed, to wallow, right, and to get pity, but to look for hope. To look for hope. Because we believe in a God named Jesus, and he brings what? He brings dead things to life. Here's an example of this. We're a church of small groups. If you haven't heard that yet, if you're not in a small group here at Heartland, that is a really important part of life, is having people to journey with in Christ. We might go to a small group and not share about these stumps in our lives. We put on a good face. We dress up. We dress them up, maybe these things. For some of us, maybe small group has become a place of complaining and not finding hope. I encourage you to turn that around. Some here haven't gone to small group, or some avoid it when things are tough in life. I just can't face it with these people. But we need safe, spirit-filled voices in our lives where we can say, here's my stump. Please, somebody show me the hope. We need that in our life. Where's the life? And be honest. If you're suffering then, if you're suffering with depression or in your marriage or with your kids or with your parents, whatever it could be, we need to begin to be vulnerable and honest. Because that's when hope can spring alive. That's when we finally start to look at it. If we never look at that stump, we'd never see the shoots. We got to look at it. We can't do it alone. That's my tendency too, is to separate and to isolate and to wallow and think I can do this by myself. How arrogant of me. I need other people to speak hope in life. So not only be vulnerable, but also do it for others as well. Give hope to others who are in need. Not ignoring, not perpetuating the sadness, but wondering, where is the hope of Christ in this? So you need to saturate in the hope. You need to be vulnerable and offer hope. And so I want to leave you with some questions then. I'm going to give you 3 questions that'll be on the screen for you to talk with the Lord about. One is this: who's someone you could be real with this week? Be real and authentic with them. Maybe someone comes to mind. Who's someone you can be a voice of hope to this week? Man, I hope someone comes to mind. Some of us need to really sit with this last question. What are the dead things you need Jesus to sprout life in? What are they? I want you to take a few moments here in just a minute and reflect on these with the Lord. You can even ask him these. But to wrap up today, I want to give you the last verse in my passage for today, is Isaiah 11, verse 10, which says this: on that day, the root of Jesse, Jesus, will stand as a banner for his peoples, which means this: the nations will look to him for guidance, and his resting place will be glorious. That's Jesus. His resting place is glorious. Let's hope in him. Jesus, show me what I see as dead in my life, and infuse that with hope from you. The God who makes dead things alive, and your justice that brings peace. Amen. I'll give you some space.